everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I have my very good friend Sabrina here with me, who the title says RX Sabrina, which means you're into pharmaceuticals. Sabrina, what's up with that, man?
Well, yes. I am into pharmaceuticals. Sounds like I'm more interested in using them. I am, but not more so.
Yeah, I was like,
Can we call you Walter?
So I am a pharmacy technician student, and also practicing as a pharmacy assistant right now. Basically, I just need to get my license before I can start calling myself a technician properly, but that's basically the job I'm doing anyway. Some people might not know exactly what that means. I work very closely with pharmacists, and where their focus is more on the clinical side of things, being able to advise patients on like the specifics of using their medication. I have more of the technical work, so I'll work with preparing the prescriptions, preparing compounds, assisting patients in use of their technical devices, like their glucose devices or their buffers or whatever the case may be. So it's like we're both doing the same work in helping patients out, just from slightly different focuses. But otherwise, yeah, that's I'm a huge nerd for this kind of stuff. I've loved it even before I started studying in school, and it just usually I turn most conversations I have into something about medicine.
Awesome. Which, if you really boil it down, it's all chemistry.
Yeah, it's all chemistry, and chemistry is honestly, I'm better at this than I was at chemistry. But
well, that's what I do for a living. I'm a chemist, lab tech again for an environmental company using stuff like gas chromatography, specifically helium argon, and also ICAP, and I also pH ion millivolt readers, stuff like that. So
yeah,
basically what I do. But anywho, everyone, this is Sabrina. Sabrina has been actually in, I think, a couple of after parties now on my show. Sabrina has a story to share with us. And I see you there in the audience, Phoebe, that yes, you were able to get Sabrina on your show earlier today, which I actually wanted to watch, but because my mom sold her apartment, I had to go and help grab a few things out of there before the new owners took over. So unfortunately, I couldn't watch, but I will watch the replay. But anyways, there are lots of links down below. If you want to follow Sabrina after hearing her story today on the show, you can follow her on Twitch or Twitter or Facebook. Although Facebook's more of a stalking thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd rather you not stalk me on Facebook. Twitter and Twitch. I haven't started streaming yet on Twitch. I think I'm motivated to do my first stream tomorrow, but I've been getting all my stuff together, and I'm going to start streaming some games because I love video games as well.
Right on. Awesome. So you know what I do here, Sabrina? I chat with folks about their journeys away from whatever faith systems they were once a part of, and kind of take us on the ups and downs of the whole spiel, and how you slowly but surely started realizing that it was all pure fucking mythology.
Yes, indeed. And before I get started on my story, I do want to find something kind of interesting. I first interacted with you, not in the after show, but I was like just viewing the after show. This is before I was using my current name, and I was just commenting, and someone's like, "Oh, check to see if Sabrina, different name at the time, has a deconversion story." And I remember you commenting, it's like, "Oh, well, since you're part of this community, probably unlikely." I'm like, "No, I have a deconversion story," at which point we connected at that stage. So, yeah, here I am. And
yeah.
So, start from the beginning. I don't know. I don't like doing things in chronological order. So
just kind of tell us the highlight shit. And
yeah, for sure. So I was born here in Canada, just like yourself, actually in the Greater Toronto area, and I've always lived in the Greater Toronto area. I now live in Toronto proper, but I used to be in Mississauga, which is Toronto Light, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I not appreciating how uncommon it was actually in the area, but I was born to fairly fundamentalist evangelical Christians. So we were a part of Christian Baptist, or sorry, Canadian Baptist Church.
Hey, we do have chapters of the NFB up here, the New Fundamentalist Baptist Church up here. There's one in my neighborhood.
The church that I was a part of was mostly independent. There was like association with some of the other local churches, but at the end of the day, like we had no leadership. We didn't answer to anyone else, for both better and for worse. But yeah, I grew up. When it comes to fundamentalists, you know what that means. You might know what that means. That means we believe the Bible is, in fact, directly inspired by God. It is entirely inerrant, so everything in it is true.
Horseshit. Sorry.
Horseshit. Ironically, and I'm going to come to this later, I'm actually thankful that I grew up in that, as opposed to certain other sects of Christianity. And yeah, I will come to that. So I grew up in this kind of environment, fairly conservative, fairly anti. Even though it was never explicit, it was like all the subtext was the anti-gay stuff. I did touch upon it briefly in Phoebe's stream earlier, but I recall never being told directly by either my parents or any of the leaders in the church that I'm supposed to have a problem with gay people. I was never told directly this, but it kind of was a natural conclusion for me to come to on my own because, again, the aforementioned Bible is inerrant. And so I read this stuff, blah, 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 homosexuals not be able to inherit the kingdom of God. So basically, all this stuff was saying, like, gays are going to hell, blah, blah, blah. And I accepted this. No one ever told me directly that, but they told me everything else that I needed to hear for me to come to that conclusion. And
how did they actually talk about that? Did
um,
they do it in a way where it didn't seem offensive, even though it is? But
well, as I say, it never directly touched upon it. So, like in the
okay.
sermons that I actually was able to stay awake for, in the sermons that I listened to, um, they talk about a lot of the more benign stuff. I would say, in spite of being Baptist, we were a bit more of one of the not the positive, the charismatic style, where it was like the nice things about the Bible. We didn't really hear as much of the negative stories, at least not presented from the pulpit. Ironically, some of the more negative stories were in Sunday school class, but whatever. Uh, but it was like I'm hearing about this from the pastor and some ideas that are being reinforced. Again, I'm going to repeat it once more because third time is the charm. The Bible is inerrant and everything is true. So what happens when I start reading the Bible on my own? Apparently, it's all supposed to be true. Okay. So no one had to tell me. No one had to make any sermon whatsoever. No one had to directly. There was some implications here and there, but it was fairly light because, again, this is a church in a city. Can't really get away with the more overt bigotry that like the rural churches can get away with, or American
Sure,
churches.
yeah.
And again, I don't know if it was intentional or not. They were intentionally avoiding it, but that's what happened. And so never got it told directly, but I would read the Bible and having already been armed to accept it as complete fact, I came to the conclusion that this stuff was wrong. And so I I unfortunately unlike some of my peers who basically got frustrated with this stuff, I actually dug in harder as I got older. Went from like a young kid dealing with ADHD and having a really hard time sitting still in church, and eventually my parents stopped forcing me to go, and I would go to church on my own accord. I would like my dad would be driving. I'm like, yes, I'd like to come today, kind of thing. They allowed me to choose to do it, which I got more invested in because sunk cost fallacy. I'm now putting all this effort, all this time into this, and the idea of man, I put so much time and energy into believing in this. It better not be untrue. This again, sunk cost fallacy very much played into part into me getting even deeper into it.
Right.
Where the cracks started to form, and now I'm going to come back to what I mentioned earlier about why I was thankful I was grew up in a fundamentalist Christian church because it made having a problem with it a lot easier.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So as I was harped on before, because this was a huge part for me, point for me getting away was how I was raised to think about the LGBT community. As I entered, once I was in high school and getting a little bit older, I started making a lot more varied friends and started working and had some colleagues who were part of the LGBT community. Now, I technically had met a trans friend when I was super young, but I didn't know she was trans until we were 25. But
Okay.
nor did she. Like, that's when she came out, kind of thing. But
Right.
I hadn't met any openly gay people until in high school when I started making friends with some girls who were lesbians, some gay guys. And at this point, I was already screwed. I'm like, I've been saying all these nasty things before, but then I meet these people and become their friends. And
Was there a guilt issue involved at all?
oddly enough, no. Well, I mean, there's a slight guilt issue from some of the shit I said before, but
Right.
as far as this is concerned, I was taking everything so seriously once I became friends with them. I just basically saw, okay, wait, this is wrong. Because even though it doesn't explicitly state it, the Bible basically implies, at least from the way I was reading it, that these people are less than. They're
Right.
inherently, they're going to go to hell if this is an inherent quality of theirs.
Abominations, I think, is
they're
what it
abominations.
exactly says. Yeah.
And I meet them and become friends with them. And I'm like, wait, no, they're just the same as me and everyone else. And like,
Yeah.
and I would say, though there were a few challenges, that was one of the biggest challenges to my faith, is I could not reconcile the approach that the Christianity has to have to homosexuality and other queer community, and the fact that I know now for a fact that queer people are people. And it wasn't the only thing, and I still wasn't quite out yet, but it was where one of the biggest cracks came from. The other big cracks, which partially created by this, was I would analyze things and I would notice, like, wait, like I'm having these doubts here and there, and I've been armed to attribute doubts to Satan. He's like, oh, I'm having doubts because Satan is getting into my head. I'm like, well, hold on a second. There's a problem here with that, though. This is circular. And I didn't know any of the other terms or whatever. Like, there's all these logical things that I now
So many.
know about. But at the time, I'm just like, this is like, it's a circle because, like, my doubts are caused by Satan. So I'm not genuinely doubting. But if there was actually something wrong with this, that means there is no Satan, which means there isn't a Satan causing my doubt. It's like, this explanation only works if I assume it's already correct. And I noticed the circularity. I think I was like 17, 18 at this point that I noticed that circularity. And I would try and talk with like my pastors and some of the elders in the church about it. And sometimes I'd feel a little bit better, but it never really fully got out of it. But I just sort of consigned myself to this discontent I had. And it's the problem I had was I was willingly going to church still. I was getting this investment problem where I was so overly invested. I invested so much time already, and I sunk cost fallacy, blah blah blah.
Sure.
The change finally came because I had moved. So the reason I ended up moving out is my sister got a job in a different city or town, whatever. I got a job in a different municipality, and she was also going to school over there. And we didn't like living with her parents. There's various things. I'm not going to go into all the details there, but
There's no need to.
yeah, it's so.
I'm assuming there was a lot of clashing going on, I imagine.
Indeed. At this point, I was still a Christian. I won't even say nominally. I was still a Christian. I was still believing.
Christian light.
Christian light. No, I was going to church every week and believing it and being mad at myself every time I did something wrong, kind of thing. That's as Christian as you can get, right?
Christian zero. No calories in there.
Yeah, Christian zero. And so, but anyway, so like my sister was moving out, and because of where she was going, there's rent was an issue, and I was working. I was working quite a bit at this time, and so there happened to be. I was working at Walmart. I was there for quite a few years, so I was like established permanent employee, and there was a Walmart like walking distance from where her new apartment was going to be. And so
Oh,
I
awesome.
moved in with her, transferred to the other store, because I was able to just do that.
I bet they were sorry to see you go to the other store.
They were, they were actually, they were quite sorry to see me go, but my manager actually did something really nice for me,
Oh,
and I didn't know. I didn't know until later. At the time, he got the new store to agree to give me full-time status while I moved over
nice.
there, and
Nice.
I really appreciate that he did that for me.
Because they don't automatically do that.
No, no. I mean, the position I ended up moving into, there weren't supposed to be full-timers in that position, but I was a full-timer there, so that was pretty nice.
That's cool.
But
That's cool when an
I
employer
moved
can
there,
appreciate your value.
and so I'd been finally away from my parents, so living with my sister and her boyfriend. It wasn't as weird as that might sound.
My brain didn't go there automatically. So,
Well, I mean,
Stay out of my search history.
but so what had happened was I still think, I should be a Christian. Like, I've moved to a new store. Sundays, like normally I reserve Sundays for my church going, but like I can take a few shifts in here and there until I find a church I want to go to. Like I'll look for a church, get procrastinating, and I
I was going to
finally,
procrastinate, and I figured I'd do it tomorrow.
I finally had this chance to sit down and really think about everything without the sort of reinforcement and reminder and whatever that I was always getting while I was going to church every single week. And I was starting to think, like, wait, this is this is interesting. Like, don't actually have to believe a lot of this stuff. A lot of what when I was coming from was like really bad approaches. So, for one thing, I recognized the failure of what I now know is called Pascal's Wager. I didn't know it at the time, but Pascal's Wager,
Sure.
I realized like, oh, I'm Pascal's wagering this. Okay, that's ridiculous. Um,
Poor
I
Pascal.
still kind of bought into the, though I didn't call it this at the time, the look at the trees argument. For me, it was actually because I had a bit of my medical interest. It was look at the circulatory system. I really liked. I really found like the elegance of some of the bodily systems quite like clearly it was designed, of course. Again, naivete, but that so for a period of time, I'm like, not really Christian anymore, and that was kind of a relief because then I stopped feeling bad about masturbation. I stopped feeling bad about being friends with queer people. I stopped feeling bad about swearing, which I like to do a lot at the time. I'm actually a little less into it now than I used to be, but um, yes, I was a deist for a while, thinking like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a God, but there's no Christianity doesn't have it right, but there's got to be a God. Like clearly, this world has been designed. And then as learning more things, and eventually, because of my YouTube history, started getting recommended atheist YouTubers. And my first was actually theremin trees, which is not usually, my understanding is not usually people's first foray into atheist skeptic YouTube, but I love theremin trees. I love Link's stuff. It's
Theremin's
absolutely amazing.
great. Yeah.
By the way, we were talking a little bit earlier about Patreon money. He's one of the ones I give the most Patreon dollars to.
Oh, wow, cool.
He's
I
got
thought that was me, but yeah, okay.
no, like I'm sorry.
Just
Walked
kidding.
right into it.
You have to understand
Right
his
into it.
is amount per video, and since he doesn't put out very many videos, I have to make a really high number so that I can feel like I'm giving him enough money.
Oh,
Right.
that's the scam right
Because
there.
he'll only draw from
Oh,
like maybe
boy.
twice a year. So
Yeah, he doesn't put out that. Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 a year on average. Right?
it's 2 or 3 a year. So it's
He's a busy guy, though.
low quantity, high quality. Gosh
Yes,
darn it.
absolutely.
Screw it. don't okay, if you need to follow somebody, don't follow me. Follow Theremin Trees, okay?
No, I
You're
highly
gonna be
recommend
enriched.
that channel. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, but so followed him and started following other atheist YouTube, and I'm like, oh yeah, that
Right.
the only reason I was really like believing in the what's it called? Believing in this deist stuff is kind of just a holdover from my Christian belief. So I tossed that away too. I'm like, not a thing, not really anything anymore. Oddly enough, I didn't call myself agnostic, even though I know that's the misunderstanding of the word agnostic. I didn't call myself anything, and then eventually I'm like, oh, I guess I'm an atheist. And that is that for that part of the story. I mean, things go on. I grow in my atheist life, or whatever, however that means. Making a bunch of friends, getting involved in the like atheist Discord servers and such like that. Which, if you don't mind me segueing into a slightly different deconversion story, a slightly different story than deconversion.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if it says so in the description or not, but it might be obvious here. I'm like, oh, feminine name, but masculine appearance. What's that about? I'm like, okay, yes, I am a trans woman. I only very, very, very recently came out, back in December, in fact. And a big part of me being able to do this was through my leaving Christianity and joining the atheist community. So, two aspects to this. I'll talk about the ex-Christian bit first, pertinent, of course. So, when I was growing up, in hindsight, I understand this. At the time, I had no idea. I did chafe a lot against like the ideas of gender. I'm like, girls have much better clothes to wear than guys. But no,
Won't argue
seriously. I mean,
there.
as banal as it is, that's what it came down to.
Although this is fucking cool. Like,
I was
seriously.
about,
Don't get me wrong. I'll wear whatever I please now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying we got pockets that actually hold stuff, so I don't know if I'm getting
Hey,
off
hey, hey.
real quick.
Hold on.
I mean,
Hold on.
no purse
there
needed.
are a number of brands now that are going more progressive in that regard, and you can actually find like nice, super cute dresses.
You should launch
functional pockets too.
You have to launch the Women's Rebellion.
Yep.
Against pants for the because that is the number one complaint my wife has, and my sister's had, and my mom's had. He's like, oh, this is so cute, but I don't want to bring a purse, so I was like, just put it in your pot. Oh, you live sweatpants life. You have sweatpants life all the. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Now that particular detail was less of an issue for me because I've always, just as an individual, I've always liked having some sort of bag, like backpack or otherwise. I always had so much stuff I wanted to carry around. I always had something with me. My pockets were never enough, regardless of the benefit.
Well, they did make those little fanny packs you could wear, for a while.
Yeah, I have those. Oh, I use those all the time.
I used to back in the day.
I was known for it when I was a kid.
I'm glad that y'all got when it was cool. I lived and it wasn't cool, and then right back to it was cool because in the 90s you could not be seen with a fanny pack. It was the most embarrassing thing.
It faded out in the late 80s.
And it got. But now it's back, and fanny packs. Everything is back now, and I'm just like,
I was that weird, awkward kid who wore a fanny pack and was mocked for it, but because of how neurodivergent she was, nearly misgendered myself. As a case of how neurodivergent she was, she didn't appreciate why she was being mocked. Just such in that case. But yeah, it's just I grew up envying the clothing options that girls had, but I never considered that I actually had a choice in the matter. I'm just like, okay, well, this is my lot. This is my lot in life. This is just what I got to deal with. I didn't think like, man, I got to do something. That old expression, yeah,
it's my lot in life, and it's not a lot, but that's life.
yeah, that's just what it is. And this amounted to a number of other things. Like, I didn't appreciate how it was like guys were never supposed to show their emotions or whatever. I just did anyway because I was too fucking hyper to control myself. Again, ADHD.
Right.
Another thing that I'm oddly thankful for in hindsight, because it kind of prevented me from getting too stuck into certain things. Like, I couldn't be a hide my emotions guy because my my neurology won't let me. I'm just going to be open and honest anyway. I'm going to cry when I want, whatever.
Honestly, man, keeping your emotions at bay can be damaging.
Yep.
It's horrible.
Like today I just turned on the TV because I had some time to kill before we went live, and I watched that movie Red, I think it's called. It's the new Pixar animation about the Canadian Chinese in Toronto, the little girl that ends up turning into the red panda, and there's this moment towards the end of it with the whole family thing, and it made me cry. So
I haven't watched the movie yet. I do definitely want to watch it, but
it's cute.
One of my
it takes place in the 90s.
Yep. Yeah, and as a Torontonian, and I'm not pronouncing it correctly, by the way, intentionally.
Toronto.
One thing one of my friends mentioned is the most unrealistic thing about that film is how the characters who live in Toronto pronounce the city's name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not,
actually, I kind of chuckled.
It's not Toronto. That is not how we say our city's name. God damn it.
Nope.
No, it's like the way I would say it, I'm going to put a bit more emphasis.
Toronto.
No.
Got to roll the R.
Toronto. No, it's we soften everything and it just becomes a mess. Toronto. That's again. I'm overdoing it right now for the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
It's closer to that, and they were just pronouncing it like Americans, and I was like, I hope it doesn't make me cringe, but I still want to watch it because it looks awesome. So yeah, that's. And I got completely distracted. I don't know what I was going on about before because we started talking about Red.
Sorry. You were growing up in the Toronto area.
Oh yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. So though I can only say I've called Toronto proper, like the city of Toronto, my home for the last few years now. But I've always grown up in what we call the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. So most of my life is spent in Mississauga. I was born in Brampton. Yeah, I know it is that bad. For those of you who know the area, I know you're like giving me condolences for that.
Dude, at least it wasn't Ajax.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm not that bad. It's not that bad. One thing is Toronto was fairly notorious for having pretty bad driving. Brampton is even worse. Brampton is actually, if you have for insurance purposes, like car insurance, if you are stated as living in Brampton, it is the highest insurance premiums than any other municipality in Southern Ontario. It's just so bad.
Brampton? My sympathies.
My sympathies. Yeah, there we go. I think someone understands. You know what? Screw it. I want to do this now. It's a complete side story, but this is I love it. It's freaking hilarious. So after I'd moved out of Brampton, but I ended up going to college in Brampton, or I still am going to college in Brampton. And I was on the bus on my way to school and encountered what I would call one of the most Brampton things I've ever encountered. And so I look ahead on the road because like I'm bored on the bus. I'm just like staring ahead, and I see all this like far away. I see like all this debris on the ground at one of the intersections. I'm like, what the hell? Was there a car crash and they haven't cleaned up yet or anything like that? Again, Brampton. That's the first thing I would assume. And as I get closer and realize what's actually on the ground, me and a few other people start howling with laughter because what we actually found is the intersection is just completely full of a bunch of like samosas just must have fallen out of a bag and just strewn across the ground and being driven over. And I'm just like,
you pause. You pause for just the right amount of time for me to think that this was going to go so dark. I was like, it's full of eyeballs. Oh no, that's not good.
Nope, it's food. It's ethnic food. That's
even worse. Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, that was the weirdest freaking thing ever. Anyway, sorry for my diversion. It It is what it is. No, Lordship Mayhem. Finding Canadian geese in the road is a daily and completely normal occurrence. It is never unexpected.
We'll call them what they are,
They
Cobra
stop traffic.
chickens.
They will Cobra chickens. Yes. Screw it. Another story. Was working in a store. We were right by an intersection. Looked out. Heard saw a bunch of cars just stop. They weren't moving at all. And this is a very busy intersection. They weren't moving at all. There were a bunch of Canadian geese just in the middle of the intersection, and not a single driver had decided to even inch forward or honk their horns or anything, because you do not fuck with Canadian geese. No, you don't. They patiently waited for the geese to be out of the way, at which point they calmly started their cars back up and drove. And this is in Toronto. This is in Toronto. When drivers are the most impatient and they know not to screw with the Canadian geese. Pedestrians, no, you're gonna honk at and edge pedestrians away. There's a Canadian goose in there. Nope, I'm fine. I can get to work 15 minutes later or whatever. I don't mind. I'd rather not die.
They just walk into work and say, Canadian geese traffic.
And they would get it. They would literally get it. We all get it. Oh, boy.
I got trapped in my car for 14 hours one time when I took a nap right outside the door.
This is true, by the way. They can take down an Airbus. Like it happened once, didn't it? Like they fucked up an engine. Yeah,
that's why it's a thing. They did.
It's
I'm just saying this is a thing. I have no confirmation, but it just makes sense to me, so I'm going to assume it did happen.
Goddamn.
Boy, I've gotten myself so distracted. Whatever. It's a casual thing anyway, right?
Exactly. We sidetrack on these shows all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to save some of my stories for the after show, though.
We'll be talking about all. You never know what we talk about in the after parties. The after parties are what they are. They're usually a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, we'll try to bring things back to a more consistent thing. Right. Oh, I was talking about my coming out as trans and whatnot. So
right,
I had conceded, even though there was a lot of things which to some people would have been clear evidence that I was a girl, but I just like no, I'm just unfortunately just a boy with weird interests or whatever. Yeah. And even after I had left religion, I guess I had been living as a guy for so long, I didn't really think to start deconstructing it. Because like I became an atheist when I was like 24, 25. I'm 30 now, so I've been for that long. And as I say, start joining atheist servers earlier, and this is where my next change comes. And a few of the people relevant to this story are in the chat right now. Hello, Stephanie. And so I've joined a number of servers, one of which is the Atheist Community of Austin Discord server, which is now known as the Atheist Community of Discord.
Yes.
And here I come in here, chat with people, whatever, start making some friends. It's great. And notably, as time's going on, I'm making a lot of friends who are queer. Some are gay, lesbians. Like unfortunately, I had some, but I didn't have too many of these friends before. Just didn't have access to people, or at least they weren't necessarily telling me. But now I'm like meeting all these people who are openly queer, openly trans, and I'm talking with them, learning about their experiences. These people are becoming really valuable friends of mine. Like I quite appreciate the experiences they have. I empathize with their experiences. I wonder why. And I start getting really interested in it, almost inordinately interested in trans healthcare. In becoming friends with these people, I started noticing some of my patients at work. I know some of them are trans because I now know what medications are used for transitioning patients. And so I'm like, oh, I want to know more about medicine, because I know there's like so little that people have access to. Like I know people, like Stephanie has told me that a lot of trans people have to educate their physicians as to what they need, kind of thing.
Right.
Like we're the ones who do the research and tell our doctors what to give us, kind of thing. And I'm like, I hate this. This is ridiculous. Like, we as medical professionals, we are failing a very, like, it's not a very large part of our population, but it is a visible part of the population, and it is a very underserved part of the population.
Yes.
And like, thankfully, they've been able to do some of their own research and be able to help themselves, but like, that's not their job. That's our job. And so I want to do research. I'm looking at all this stuff, looking at how this healthcare works. I start trying to find resources. We have this organization, Rainbow Health Ontario, which is a program run by Sherburne Health, where they're focusing on like queer healthcare, and they have all these guidelines laid out for what would be like good dosing schedules and everything, because I'm, again, focusing on the pharmaceutical side of things, and just trying to educate myself so at least I can help my patients out and help educate other people as to what's relevant. I do further things. I goof around with our pharmacy software, and I found a way to allow. Okay, sorry. Let me back up for a second. One of the problems that happens in community pharmacy situations for trans patients is they get dead named a lot. Why do they get dead named? Because if they have insurance coverage, either through like government coverage for their medications or private insurance coverage, if they haven't necessarily had their legal names changed yet, then
that name
they
remains.
need to submit it with their dead name, which is unfortunate. And a lot of them, like I had for my own stuff when I was young, they had sort of just conceded and they're like, okay, this is what it is. I'm just going to have to acknowledge that there's my dead name that's going to be on my medication bottle, but everyone calls me by my proper name when I'm at home. And the bare minimum I started with was just like trying to ensure I know what people's preferred names are. I can put those on their file. It still unfortunately says their dead name on the top of the prescription, but
right.
What can I do? I'm like, well, no, I should be able to do something. And I found a way. I found an option which was actually designed for a different circumstance, for circumstances. I found an option to be able to keep the name on the file as whatever they want, so their preferred name, but specifically change the name that is submitted to the insurance without changing anything else. It's a name override system. What was originally used for is if some people get married and take their spouse's name, we should be able to override it so that they can have their proper name there. But that's the case. And then there's other things like nicknames and preferred names. Some people prefer to go by their middle name, so we keep the middle name as the first name there, but then the first name in the override, whatever. Like, that's what the system was designed for. But I'm like, wait, I can use this for the trans patients. And I did also discover that I think the software designers also know this, because there's also a gender override in that section too. So clearly,
really,
yeah, in this goofing around with software.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, so there's a name and also a gender override in these insurance billing things. So one of my patients, who's a trans man, can have his name on the front, his gender on the front. It says man, male, sex male, whatever, his preferred name. And then when I submit the insurance, he'll never see it, but it has his feminine birth name and it says female there. And so the insurance will still accept and will still pay for his medications, and we won't have any problems. And that's awesome. And I'm so happy. And throughout all of this, I'm still just a silly little egg where all my trans friends have at this point figured out that I'm actually trans in the closet, kind of thing. And finally, what ends up finally breaking the shell open was as banal as a simple definition. I'm in Discord reading a text conversation, and it's relevant to some gender stuff. And then one of my friends, he posts for the sake of this argument, here's the literal dictionary definition of transgender. And then I read it, and I'm like, fuck. God damn it.
Well, what did it say?
Well, I can't remember the exact words, but long story short, it said I'm trans.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. I'm actually trans. And this was December 12th, 2021. I will not forget this day ever now. And I, right on the spot, I'm just made a reply comment like, God damn it, Jack. You just type it out here so unambiguous. I'm just like, fuck. I'm trans. So my coming out as trans to myself coincided with me coming out to a whole bunch of people on the internet. Oh well.
Okay, so how did that go? Like give me some of the reactions. Like, did people stop?
Well, this is why I say all my trans friends already knew. Jack's response to me was like, "Oh, cool! Like I kind of already knew, but great." I got some further reactions from some
probably
other people.
Just happy you were finally able to admit it to yourself, I guess.
Exactly. No, that's exactly how that message read. I'm like super happy for me, and just kind of like,
it's awesome.
I'm super happy, but I'm not surprised in the slightest. It was the emotion I was getting out of that. I'm like, cool. I'm happy that people are. It's kind of validating in a way. Like I don't.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Clarification for people who are out there: do not feel invalid if you come out as trans and everyone is surprised. That does not make you not valid.
Right.
Because being trans is a personal experience. It just so happens that I had friends who saw it coming. Not everyone necessarily does. There's nothing wrong with it surprising people. My trans friends knew I was. First, my best friend and sister was completely surprised and blindsided by this. She's super accepting and everything. I could be wrong, but she didn't know. It was a complete surprise to her, and that's fine. It is totally valid for your coming out as trans to be a surprise to everyone you know, and as long as they're still respecting you, then they're still your friends. But
that's right.
Valid. You are valid. You are valid.
Valid regardless.
I really, really, really want to hammer this home because I'm only lucky, but it's like that I had people here to sort of reinforce my idea, but it's not necessary. It is not necessary. I just happen to have this extra resource to myself. Anyway, sorry for me sidetracking myself, but yes, that's
a quick answer to a question here. I just learned that they didn't have fees, so I may use the coffee app.
Oh,
eventually. Right now it's PayPal me, but
I didn't. And how do they make? Okay, well, cool.
Yeah, something
advertising, of course.
Okay. They got to make a buck somehow.
Well, I wasn't even thinking of making a buck, but at least like maintain the cost of their servers.
They also have an option if you want to donate to coffee. Like,
okay, then that's
too,
probably how they rely on people being like, thanks, coffee, for doing this without fees. I'm going to give you some money.
Yeah.
Which I think, it's
a better system if you ask me. And you're more likely to get people to donate a little bit of cash to it.
It's like the honest jar
because of that. Yeah. Or my swear jar here in Canada. We have a sorry jar too.
I was about to say that's what's floating the BC economy right now is Neil's swear jar.
Neil's sorry jar. Sorry.
Oh boy.
And earlier in the chat, Mark had asked, "Are you really Canadian?" Because he hadn't heard you say sorry, at least once.
Yeah. Well,
contrary to popular belief, we don't really say a lot here. It kind of slips out once in a while.
It slips out, and people will call us out when we do it, or non-Canadians will call us out. No, that's not true. I've been called out by Canadians for saying a.
Are you trying to say that Americans exaggerate things, and then they play the victim? Oh my God, I can't even listen to.
Yes,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
Yes, and yes.
We do say sorry a lot, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I'm sorry for not apologizing more during this stream.
It's because you guys are considerate of other people. That's why you say sorry. Americans just push faster and harder.
It's also why everyone blames us for stuff. Like blame Canada is apparently an important.
They will get mad. You can blame them.
We're always apologizing, so clearly we're to blame for something. So blame Canada.
It's #1 hit here in Canada. Blame Canada. Blame Canada. Their hockey hullabaloo and that bitch and Murray too. I had some. I kind of want to know how the aftermath of you coming out as an atheist went as well. Like, do you consider maybe was the trans issue worse than the atheism issue, or was the atheism issue worse?
Atheism issue, I would say, would have been was worse.
Okay.
I'm not finished with the aftermath of this because this is very recent. But for the atheism issue, anyway. So when I say I came out and I told my friends, most of whom weren't Christians anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And told my sister, who was at that time agnostic, or just ambivalent, so didn't really. But I didn't tell my parents initially.
Mm-hmm.
Do
they know now?
Oh yes. I'm getting there.
That sounds like there's a story behind that.
There's a few stories behind that. I told you I had a few stories.
True.
So I accidentally outed myself to my parents for my atheism. It was pretty funny in hindsight. So mentioned how we'd moved out, and while my sister and I were still living in our own place, because that's changed now. We moved back in with her parents, and then Maddie's moved out again because she has a really well-paying job, so she can afford rent on her own in Toronto. Good for her.
All the jobs.
Yeah, no. She's a very valued employee where she's at.
Try living here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I wouldn't live in Vancouver. So that was one of her options. Because my sister's an animator, by the way. So a lot of animation jobs in Toronto, a lot of animation jobs in Vancouver.
Yeah, Hollywood North here.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so at this time, while we're having been moved out, my parents are planning not exactly a vacation, but a trip that we're all going to go on. Because while most of my family, especially most of my mom's family, lives here in Ontario, my dad is from your part of the world, Neil. He grew up in Vancouver, and also a portion of his young adulthood was in Calgary as well. All of my dad's family, that's why my dad's the more conservative one. All of my dad's family is out in that part of Canada. So we were going to go on a trip to see family because we don't see this chunk of family very often. I booked some time off work. Had a few vacation weeks to use. So I used one of them. My sister booked some time off work, and we all had a family trip to go out and see things as well, and see family. By the way, driving through the Rockies is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Even when you're not the driver. If you're just a passenger, going through the mountains in a van, just it's a nice experience for sure. I enjoyed that because our trip involved flying to BC, driving through the Rocky Mountains, and then eventually flying back home from Alberta. It was a nice trip. Got to see a lot of neat things. Anyway, sidetrack done. Go out there. So while I'm visiting with some family members, including my grandmother and my uncle. My uncle, by the way, I'm not going to say he's an atheist, because he's certainly not skeptical of certain things, but it's kind of like...
Well, atheist doesn't make you skeptical of everything. It's just religion.
No, but I mean... Yeah, he's probably an atheist. He's never specifically used the word atheist, but he's also a conspiracy theorist, and there's a lot of other things he's into. But nonetheless, he was of taking positions that clash significantly with our heavily conservative Christian family. Otherwise Christian family, including my grandmother and my dad and my mom and all that. And so I remember after, I can't even remember what the conversation was about. I sort of more remember the aftermath or the results of the conversation. But he was having a conversation, or we were having a conversation together. It was mostly him and my parents talking. And he made a point, which I found quite agreeable. I think it was something against religion. Again, I can't remember. It's weird that I can't remember the exact details. But
blocked it out.
My dad said something in response to his, like, well, obviously that's not the case. And I'm like, well, actually, Bruce kind of makes a point here. And then my dad and my mom just turned to me and looked, and I'm just frozen. And I'm like, oh, right. Because there's no way I would have agreed with him if I was a Christian. I'm like, I'm not a Christian anymore. My dad's like, kind of figured at this point.
Is that what he said?
I wasn't surprised. Well, because at this point I was becoming a lot more liberal, like a lot more leftist and everything. And of course, in this particular sect of Christianity we're part of is like, you have to be conservative to be a Christian. Bullshit. Like that was, again, I can't agree with liberal things and still be a good Christian. And so I think he already knew I was going there because I was becoming very, very, very left leaning on a lot of things. So he wasn't particularly surprised. And I'm like, it was pretty good. It changed almost nothing, except I just didn't have to hide it anymore. And yeah, that was a particularly not negative experience about accidentally adding myself as an atheist to my Christian family. Again, I had the advantage of being on vacation with them, but not living with them at the time. It was a positive. Now I come to the next stage and the next part of this story, or the next story, I should just say. So my sister and I, we were living on our own, working consistently, but we were both ended up having to go back to school. So we can't afford rent when we can't work full time.
Right.
So move back in with our parents. At this stage, various things had happened, and some things are private, so I'm not going to share, but they didn't have their old house anymore. They were living in a small apartment, and so to move back in with them, it was super cramped, and we ended up having to try and find a new apartment, which we do. It's where we are right now. That's how we ended up in Toronto. We found a pretty decent 3-bedroom apartment here for surprisingly cheap. It was when there was a bit of a lull in the rent prices, and so we got it at the right time. And
happens here too.
Now, the equivalent apartment in this building would be a lot more than what we're paying right now because can't raise rent too much. You know how it works. So we're holding on to this thing. Regardless, so I'm living with my parents again after having lived apart from them for a couple of years. Things are a bit different now. We didn't have the same relationship anymore. I was no longer, even though I had been an adult in their household.
Damn roommates.
Speaking of parents.
Oh.
Yeah. I literally wrote "Do not disturb" on the door. Anyway, no. My mom was already. She's a lovely person. She was actually bringing me a snack, so I feel really bad. But,
oh, see,
yeah. My mom's so lovely, and this is ironic for what I was about to say. So pre-moving out, I was still kind of, even as an adult, I was still kind of treated as a kid. So, like, our relationship had that sort of disconnect where, like, they were above, I was still below. Not like in a malicious way, it's just like in a maturity way. But after having moved out, taking care of things like cooking and a lot of other things on my own, and moved back in, it was a bit different. We were a lot closer to equals at this point, which included in conversation and being able to talk about things like religion. And so I have and this is why I say definitely out to my parents, because I have like religious arguments with them quite frequently. I'll say with my mom, I have conversations. We're always treating with each other with respect. With my dad, it does kind of get a bit more heated and into arguments, and so we don't talk about it nearly as much because it's not as healthy, but they happen periodically. But yeah, it's like I'm super open. I talk about being an atheist with them all the time, and they talk about being a Christian and being Christians. And for the most part, it's a pretty functional conversation. I'm quite lucky to be able to have this kind of relationship with fundamentalist Christian parents as an atheist. I know I'm really lucky. I'm not gonna hide this. I understand I'm in a really good position that a lot of people don't have the advantage of. So
I take it
I see my privilege.
Yeah. We all have privilege one way or another. But
Exactly.
Here in North America, I mean, anyways. But it's some more than others. Let's not kid ourselves. But anyways, I guess you guys don't talk about religion a lot. So there's not a lot of discomfort and stuff like that going on, or
as I say, it's different.
It's
different between the two parents.
Okay,
that is pretty much accurate how my relationship with my dad goes. We don't talk about religion very much. We do occasionally, but we kind of both understand that if either of us go too far, it'll make things too awkward. So we usually talk about work stuff instead. I actually, though I now work in my own place, I used to work in the same company as my dad, different stores though. And because we had shared acquaintances and shared experiences, it was actually something that's quite nice to talk about. And I still talk about it with him, because even though I don't work in that industry anymore, I still appreciate it. I still worked there. I still know what it was like. So it's nice to talk about work stuff. And there's kind of other things that we can talk about too. But I really do talk with my mom a lot more, just about things in general and religion in specific. And we talk lately. I haven't had too many conversations, mostly because just I've been busy. But we have at times talked quite frequently about it. And I think it's partially a consequence of my mom having a fairly good character. And I don't know, I guess I must be patient or something like that, because we're able to engage with each other pretty well. And well, it seems like
patience is huge.
It seems like we don't necessarily agree on a lot of things. There's a lot of things we do agree on. Yeah, he's never going to watch this. Okay. So you're just thinking about my dad for a second. I don't want to out her certain things about her to my dad. So she doesn't vote conservative anymore. He doesn't know that.
Okay.
Because she's recognized that in spite of the fact that the Conservative Party is the only one that seems to agree with the really bad Christian beliefs that the Christians seem to care so much about, the abortion thing, the gay marriage thing, and all that. The Conservative Party is the only one that ever states it cares about that in the direction they like. And so my mom's like, even though they're the only party who agrees on that, it's like that's never being dealt with, and everything else are absolute garbage. I'm paraphrasing her, but she wouldn't say it. She's too nice to say it that way.
I like your mom. Your mom sounds awesome.
Yeah. Well, she's very annoying, but so am I.
I think we can probably
both have pretty bad ADHD, and that's how we get on people's nerves, because of how hyper and random we can be at times. But no, she's a lovely and surprisingly accepting individual for a fundamentalist Christian, for sure. And I've even been able to get her to come around on certain things. So I again talked about this on Phoebe's show, that it's really cool. So Neil, you remember what happened in Canada recently that matters to the queer community in December and January?
More specific.
Okay, fair enough. The banning of conversion therapy.
Oh yes, yes, a win. It was a win.
It was a win. Yes, a good thing for us.
So, absolutely, and I spoke about it on a previous show a little while back.
So yes, this is a few months old now, but while it had been banned in a number of provinces and a number of cities had bylaws to try to restrict it, as of this year, January 2022, conversion therapy, which for those of you who don't know is basically trying to counsel the gay or
it's fucking pseudoscience bullshit is what it is, and it's also bigoted shit.
And that practice has been now made completely illegal I mean, sure, there's some loopholes here and there, but like it's a pretty sweeping bill made illegal in Canada throughout the whole country rather than just individual provinces, which is a huge win. And after this bill was proposed in December, but before it came fully into law, I decided I got a copy of the movie called Boy Erased, which, for those of you who don't know, really, really good movie.
It is.
And it has to do with...
It's heavy, but it's good.
It's heavy. Oh, it's heavy, yes.
Yeah.
It has to do with...
Bring lots of these.
One young man who had gone through conversion therapy. And the hurt that had caused. And so I got this movie, I watched it myself, quite appreciated it, and I'm like, Mom might be able to watch this. And so one day when Dad was at work and I didn't have a shift that day, me and my mom, we sat down at our TV. I put Boy Erased in, told her the premise, and I'm like, you might be appreciate this. She's like, yeah, you know what, I'll watch this. And she very much appreciated it. She's like, still coming from a Christian belief, thinking that you're not supposed to be gay, but she's like, I can definitely say this is bad. This shouldn't happen like this. Absolutely not.
The caring person inside of her shone over top of the religious person.
And I would say generally that happens. And from some of the stories she's told me, I think I know why. It's because she's had some very important queer friends when she grew up, and she, I guess, was never able. She's compartmentalized such that she doesn't have the same cognitive dissonance I had, or at least that I know of. Maybe she does. Oh, maybe she does. Maybe I'll keep pushing her, and eventually I can get her to change. Regardless, she clearly wants to care about people. She wants to show people respect, and that's more important for her. Yes, it is. It absolutely is, Jonathan. And it's appalling that it's still legal in what countries that purport to be civilized.
And that's like some of the worst end results that you can get right there. Self-harm and suicide. It happens more than you know.
Yeah. It's
horrifying, dude. It's horrifying.
Yeah. And I just, oh boy. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. Like, yeah, I'm not able to be completely out to my parents. Like, I have some friends who have parents who are just like, yeah, it's totally cool. But I feel like I'll have at least one of them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have my sister. As I say, she's my best friend. Always has been, always will be. And she, though she had been courted by the gender critical movement at one point or another, she's come quite around from that. So I'm very happy about that for sure. And I have plenty of friends, a lot of my extended family, not my aunts and uncles. They're all the same as my parents. Almost all of them are the same as my parents.
Could be a generational thing, maybe.
Honestly, it's noted because it seems like all my cousins, all my mom's brothers and sisters are like heavily into this, heavily Christian, and then all my cousins are like at best nominal Christians. Well, at best or at worst, I should say. At worst, nominal Christians who just don't really care about that, and at best, like just openly agnostic atheists or just atheists. I think most of them are atheists at this point.
Yeah, I kind of call myself that one now too.
Yeah, and that's
atheist
and that's great. So like I've come out on Facebook, deleted all people that would have a problem with that, and came out on Facebook, and some of my cousins reached out.
The character you chose, that was a Valhalla, I think, right? Something isn't that the character you chose for the picture?
Oh yes.
What's her name? I can't remember her name.
Yeah, Jill Stingray.
Jill Stingray.
I have a few different things I like to use as avatars, but
she's the best, man.
Oh fuck, I love Jill. I love Jill so much. Thank you for bringing this up. Actually, Jill is fucking hell though. Jill is a huge crush of mine. Really?
Yeah. It's okay. We all have them.
Yeah. But one thing that's interesting about it is
almost coming to volunteer something.
My interest in her. So Jill, for those of you who haven't played the game, she's canonically bisexual. But it does seem pretty clear that it was not explicitly stated that she seems to be homo-romantic. So while she can be she has sexual experiences with guys, it seems like she really only emotionally or romantically connects with girls, and her ex-girlfriend is kind of a plot point in the story, so I'm not going to spoil anything about that. And I remember playing through this still thinking I was male, but I felt like I was like I felt like I connected with her better in the way that she connected with girls than the way that she connected with guys. And I'm just like, well, but that's not a case. I'm a guy. I'm not a lesbian. And so yeah, but I can. There's probably tons of things that have been. I can connect to something else. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
We're humans. We like to make connections, right?
Yep, that's what we're all about, is making connections one way or another.
One way or another.
And I very much appreciate you making a connection with me here today and coming on the show and sharing your stories with us.
Having me
I really appreciate it.
Great.
I love it. It was a lot of fun. Oh, thanks. Right back at you. And you're Canadian too, which you're automatically up another level in my book. So, Mikey, I'll make you a Canadian.
Here's the thing, Mikey. If it hadn't done that, I was just about to say, Mikey, you can be an honorary Canadian, but then you do that. I'm like, oh, never mind.
Does it come with citizenship?
Hell yeah, I can get you in here.
Yes.
Honestly, I'd love to. I just want to get all like the Americans who are actually cool people and just be like, come to Canada. We'll give you the stuff that you actually deserve.
There's about 40 of us all together, I think.
I know a few more than 40 good Americans.
But with that whole thumbs down thing you were doing there, Mikey, I was going to say to Sabrina, we should release the Cobra chickens on them.
No, I'm sorry. The beating through the doors. I can hear the hissing.
But I think anything else we can talk about, we can do that in the after party, because I just noticed we're like 10 minutes almost past the hour.
Ooh, Neil.
Oh, look at that, huh? There's some record time in here. But I definitely want to thank you for joining me, Sabrina. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's always so much fun being in streams with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. And Mikey, thank you for another fabulous job. And just to give you guys out there in the chat a little heads up, there's going to be some cool shit coming on the show. So be prepared to be amazed. Because I got this guy, and he's pretty fucking amazing. So
and he has new toys. Neil, before you sign off all the way, you will note there's a Stinger A1 that you need to play before you play your goodbyes. There's a new video.
Oh, Stinger A1. Okay.
Ooh,
all right. Well, something new. I don't know how we can handle this. I don't know.
I'll push it.
My head's going to explode.
That one. We're out of sync.
Well, yeah, I was just going to do that. Thanking everyone there in the chat. You guys are awesome. I love it when you come and hang out with us and interact with the show. Myself and I could probably even speak on behalf of Sabrina. We all appreciate the fact that you do that, because it makes the show a little bit better. And my patrons, without you guys, this shit wouldn't be happening. So thank you for all you do. Big love hearts for you guys too. Yeah, and all the links to all the other crap that I'm involved with is down below in the description box, along with the links I've shared for Sabrina. If you want to become friends with or follow her Twitch channel, you can as well. It's all down below. And also, and I keep forgetting to mention this stuff, and I should be doing it every time, especially since I just reached out to Dr. Daryl Ray about coming on the show. I do have tons of links if you are having some problems, and there are lots of links below to help you out with any issues of deconversion, or even coming out as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community. There are lots of links down below to help out with that. So appreciate you guys, and appreciate you, Sabrina. And we are going to get into an after party. If you are interested in joining us for that, please let myself or Mikey know via the usual formats. And if you aren't on Twitter or Facebook for some odd reason, you can hit me via email, which is linked below as well. All right, let's wrap this one up. And like I always say at the end of the interviews, like the late great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.
Don't forget to do it.
So do I hit the stinger thingy? Is that what I'm doing?
And then do the outro one.
Okay, then. Here we go. Let's give it a try. This is brand new, folks.
You ready for me? So Randolf Richardson and Neil the 604 Atheist are starting their own show, call-in show, called True North Talk. Go and subscribe, True Believers, so that you don't miss the launch. Tasty beer.
Flavor saver.
That is